Yo, what up, Miles? Where you at?
What's up? Beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. Mesa.
You're
Palm
back home?
trees and perfect weather.
Nice. How long you back home for?
Like 12 hours.
Oh
I'm
shoot.
leaving for Miami tomorrow.
Back to Miami. I'm home. It's still down in Chicago. Coming at you live on a beautiful Sunday.
Dark over
Episode.
there already.
I know, right? Daylight savings time. So you want to start with Lakers or Minnesota first?
Let's start with Minnesota. Let's start with the Lakers.
I realized that in the title I put Lakers and Lakers.
That's right. You
See
can
that?
edit it, right?
Yeah, I think so. That's fine. So the Lakers. We were
Lakers.
talking before we started. JaVale McGee is leading the league in blocks per game.
Yeah.
And the
He's
Los Angeles Lakers are fourth in blocks per game at 6.7.
He had 6 blocks last night against Portland. He's disrupting a lot of stuff down in the paint.
He's big for them.
Yeah, his stat line 12 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 blocks. That's big with 3 fouls. And that's an important stat because a block to personal foul ratio of 2 for your big man down in the paint is huge because he was allowed to play almost 30 minutes, which disrupted a lot of stuff for Portland when they tried to drive. And they had a tough time around the 3-point line last night where they shot 17%, I think, from 3-point range, which is rough, especially against the Lakers who are going to pound it down in the paint against you. And you know they're going to have that solid field goal percentage every single night because that's their game. I mean, they don't have another option. They got to go bully ball against you.
Right.
And I think the biggest problem for Portland, actually, they're a better team than the Lakers right now. And their biggest strength is their rebounding. And they did not rebound well against the Lakers last night. I should say that they allowed the Lakers to rebound way better than they should have.
JaVale McGee up to 15.1 points per game this year, up from almost double from his career, pretty much exactly double from 7.6. He's definitely anchoring that 5 spot and allowing the LeBron to do whatever he wants at the 4, especially just taking up as much space in the paint as he can. It seems like he's almost like a DeAndre Jordan of old, not DeAndre Jordan now, where he can just catch bombs at will and just finish at anything. Lonzo, Rondo, LeBron. And like you said, 6 blocks against Portland last night. Each one of them was big. He was almost he's a very big loss for Golden State too. And it makes me think, out of all of the ancillary pieces to Golden State, Nick Young, JaVale McGee, David West, he might be the one to be most successful after moving on. Maybe not
Absolutely.
Boogie.
But absolutely.
It seems like he's really made a resurgence after being with the stability of Golden State. I mean, if you think about his whole career, I haven't pulled up here, so let's just kind of. I'm curious now. Washington for the first 3 years of his career, Toronto, then back to Washington, Denver for 3 years, from 2011 to 2013. I remember those Carmelo Anthony years. They were a playoff team with Billups. Back to Toronto, then back to Denver, Philly in 2014, Dallas in 2015, and then in 16 and 17 is with Golden State.
That's a good point you make about like JaVale McGee and Golden State, because I think he was really taken for granted, and that's not really the Warriors' fault. All the pieces that they have over there, it's like they literally can't use everybody. So JaVale McGee having success after leaving Golden State, I'm actually like thrilled to death to see it. And I think that the Lakers are a really good choice for him. And they're about to get Tyson Chandler, who I think could be a really big influence on a JaVale McGee.
You're alluding to the fact that the Suns are going to buy out Tyson Chandler, and he's going to be.
They already have.
They have?
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of going and being Joel Embiid's backup in Philly, you think he's going to join LeBron in
Oh,
Los
I'm
Angeles.
almost positive. Tyson Chandler's a West Coast guy. He already tried New York. That's my guess. Everything that I'm seeing, I mean, Tyson Chandler's at the end of his career. He wants to chase a championship. Following LeBron makes the most sense. And joining a young team, he wants to be an influence on a young team, which is why I thought Phoenix made so much sense for him, having DeAndre Ayton, Booker. And the Suns have kind of like hit a rough streak, like playing without Devin Booker. They're not going to do very well without Booker. I mean,
and DeAndre Ayton is clearly at a level that you kind of weren't expecting. He's really good.
Yeah, no, he looks like a pro already.
From the very opening game of his, he was already kind of like not listening to Tyson Chandler's wisdom and kind of doing his own thing and exploring his own ways. And I mean, you can't really fault him for that.
No, but at the same time, I mean, the guy's been in the league for 18 years. He's got something to share.
Maybe one too many chefs in the kitchen. I think Tyson Chandler can still contribute.
Absolutely. He put up I know he was averaging 9.5 rebounds a game last year. But even at his age, he could go in and definitely help the Lakers off the bench.
So I texted you this earlier in the week, and I kind of wanted to talk about it over live. Say in a hypothetical situation, we trade the Lakers Kuzma and Ingram for the Celtics Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And as prospects, as pure prospects, how do they each develop? Because, disregarding the fact that Kuzma's value is arguably better because he was taken at the 27th pick instead of the 3rd pick as Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. But, I think they're both, all 4 of those young players are young wings and franchise-altering parts, of their career. And it's interesting because you have the Brad Stevens effect making Jason Tatum look, just even more amazing than he was in his 1 year at Duke. But Kyle Kuzma looks really good next to LeBron. And Brandon Ingram, he would also look equally as improved under a Brad Stevens system. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
So I think I can see Kuzma in, like you said, that Brad Stevens system, because he gives them absolute freedom, the green light, to do what they need to do to find the rhythm, whatever that is. A couple games.
Because Kuzma can score without being called upon, without drawing up a play for. He can get an offensive rebound. He can get a backdoor cut. He can do the smart things, and he'll defend, which, is the reason why Brad Stevens will play in the first place.
He's extraordinarily capable and very confident about his abilities, which I think goes a long ways in a hypothetical trade. I mean, in a real life trade, I think it would go a long ways as well. I think he could honestly adjust to any team in the league. He could be thrown into a situation.
I mean, he's thriving next to LeBron James more so than the other 3 young pieces. If you throw in Hart and Ball in there with Ingram, like, he's the one who's playing the best next to LeBron, and he's the one who's intuitively, basketball IQ wise, I think is the most ready for LeBron.
Yeah, and even more than that, I think he's probably the most excited about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think so too.
And Rondo's been playing really well. He needs to keep his temper under control. I'll finish answering the question. So going back to Tatum coming to the Lakers, I think it would be pretty much the same thing, where I think Tatum can adjust to pretty much anything in the league. He's a superstar, or at least an up-and-coming superstar. He's going to be. I think he's already an elite scorer. Just watching how smooth he is, he reminds me a lot of Kevin Durant. I think you can kind of see the influence the 2 of them have on each other, playing one-on-one in the summer, and you can see the Kobe influence on Tatum. I think he'll fit in anywhere.
The Kobe influence is really, like, especially when he posts up.
Yeah.
See,
mid-range, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think Jaylen Brown would be the one I'd be most worried about. Is Jaylen Brown going to the Lakers?
See, I think it's Brandon Ingram going to the Celtics. I think if he's not coddled under that Lakers like protection, I don't think he would develop those first couple of years out of the league. Maybe the Celtics probably, they're a smart organization and they probably do the same, but
I see Ingram as being a lot more exposed in LA than he would be in Boston. Because Boston has Horford. They would bring along Kuzma.
They would
have Hayward, Irving. I'd see Ingram being able to kind of like take his time to find his role in Boston. And I would see that he would get a lot of help in that way because Boston is a really established franchise right now, where the Lakers are still kind of trying to find things. And I don't think Jaylen Brown would be the answer for that. I think he's talented. He's got a lot of potential, but I think Boston right now is the only place for him. And watching him this year.
What you're almost saying is that you would almost take the Lakers' young talent over Boston's.
I think I would, actually. I think just as far as like switching teams.
You think Kuzma is better than Jason Tatum? You would take
absolutely not.
Well, because I was going to lead into this follow-up question. Anthony Davis. If you're Anthony Davis and you're in a position where you can force a trade before the February trade,
for the Lakers.
Would you go for the Celtics or would you go for the Lakers?
Oh, Celtics or Lakers.
And if you're the Pelicans, do you take a nucleus of the Sacramento pick, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and a player to be named later, or do you take Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Lonzo Ball?
That's a lot of pieces right there. If I'm Anthony Davis.
Exactly. Answer this from the Pelicans' perspective and from Anthony Davis' perspective.
If I'm Anthony Davis, at this point, I'd probably go for the Lakers, being that it would be a much more realistic trade. I think Anthony Davis playing alongside LeBron James with Rondo, Stevenson.
Oh, I didn't even think about the Rondo connection there. That could be big.
Yeah. I think that would be the direction that he would go. And that it's a little bit personal because putting Anthony Davis on the Bay with DeMarcus Cousins in Golden State, and I was going to ask you a question about DeMarcus Cousins.
Oh, man.
I think that would make a really cool rivalry.
Him.
Yeah.
Dude, the Warriors somehow might have a chance to sign Anthony Davis. I don't know how.
No way. Not a chance.
Okay.
Anthony Davis would absolutely destroy his career if he did that. I think DeMarcus Cousins has already destroyed his career. But yes, in that hypothetical, I would go for the Lakers because I think it's a realistic thing. Definitely, I mean, if not a midseason trade, definitely in free agency. Boston doesn't have the cap space to really make room for an Anthony Davis. And from a general management standpoint, if I'm the Boston Celtics, I'm not trying to take on Anthony Davis. They're a championship-ready team right now. They need to figure out their stuff right now. From a New Orleans Pelicans,
take on Anthony Davis. If you're Danny Ainge, who gets rid of Isaiah Thomas, you don't take one look at Gordon Hayward struggling coming back. You don't take one look at Kyrie's flailing health and say, we have a chance at a superstar, Anthony Davis, to re-sign him to the Supermax. And we would only have to give up Jaylen Brown and one of the aforementioned big contracts to make up for it. And who's to say that the Pelicans don't take it? Because maybe Anthony Davis makes a list of 5 teams he wants to go to. Lakers, Boston. I'm not sure who else would be on the list for Anthony Davis. I'm not sure what his priorities are. I think he wants to make it work in New Orleans. I think he wants to see what his team can do this year. But I
I
don't
think he
know.
wants to see what he can do individually. I think he wants to see if he can carry a team and see how far he can do that, especially in the West. And I think in free agency, I don't see him staying. I see him chasing a max deal with, I mean, not a super max, obviously. If he stays in New Orleans, he's going to make money.
If you're thinking about the MVP in terms of like a sports writer in a sports world, Anthony Davis is the logical candidate. He's a new face in a small market that will put up crazy numbers on a playoff team. He checks almost all of the boxes for an MVP type year.
Yeah, and in a general management viewpoint, in the NBA today, I'm looking at the potential of losing the most dominant player in the league. And do you kind of like hedge your bet and try and make a trade with Boston to pick up a Kyrie Irving or a Hayward?
Do you think Jaylen Brown can be Paul George given his own team? I mean, he's in the shadow of Jason Tatum. The guy's 21 years old. You're not telling me at 21 years old he's not better than Paul George was in his second year in Indiana. He's not better than Kawhi was his second year, averaging like 10 points in San Antonio. Jaylen Brown has a chance.
Kawhi Leonard joined a tough team because
Jaylen Brown has the work ethic and all the intangibles to be a great player.
I agree with that. He looks so hectic. Seeing the way that Jason Tatum plays against the way that
you're not getting Jason Tatum if you're the Pelicans. He's
trading Anthony Davis though. Why not?
He's untouchable. Jason Tatum's untouchable. What are you talking about?
Anthony Davis is untouchable.
No, not if he forces his way out.
And that's not working for a lot of guys in the league.
You can get the Sacramento pick and Jaylen Brown. Or, I mean, we haven't even debated the Lakers side, the Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, if you're the Pelicans. Do you rebuild around those two guys? Are those guys enough for Anthony Davis?
I don't think so.
If he says only the Lakers, I'm going to...
As a general manager, you don't have to bend down to that because, I mean, we saw it with Carmelo Anthony. We're seeing it right now with Jimmy Butler.
Tell that to Greg Popovich.
What about Greg Popovich?
He traded Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, but Kawhi Leonard didn't demand trade to Toronto, and he got DeMar DeRozan out of it. I think the biggest mistake there was he lost Danny Green.
I think we just disagree on where Jaylen Brown could be, and I'm really high on him.
I haven't been impressed this year. I was impressed last year in the playoffs. I was proud of what they did. I'd like to see him get back to that form and reignite my excitement for him. But so far, I haven't been impressed.
Although I'm not sure if he's worth max extension right now at the place where he's at. But also, kind of staying on the Lakers, I wanted to kind of bring up with you Luke Walton. And I was watching the game last night against the Blazers, and I was thinking, how much is Luke Walton really coaching? I mean, honestly, how much is Mike D'Antoni coaching when Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, and James Harden are out there? And how much of it is like ego management and expectation? It's like, man, Luke Walton is just trying to – LeBron's out there and he's painting his Picasso, painting or whatever. He doesn't need Luke Walton's play call. It's not Luke Walton's fault that the Lakers – have a losing record right now.
So I kind of have a mixed bag on this because I think Luke Walton is doing a good job, but he right now has the hardest job in the world where he's under a Hall of Famer in Magic Johnson who knows the game, and you don't want to go against what that guy says. And he's got a player who's the best player in the world, and you don't want to make him unhappy. So he's trying to find this balance of how do I keep LeBron James happy? And LeBron James thinks that he's doing the best that he can by ordering people around and trying to make him play this LeBron system, but he's not playing that well. He's making a lot of really stupid mistakes. and they're not mistakes that LeBron James should be making. I mean, like a behind the back pass straight out of bounds. What? Twice. I saw it twice. That's not a mistake that a future Hall of Famer should be making. Even this early in the season with a new team, he's got to know where his teammates are. I think a lot of the fault is on LeBron James as far as like a coaching standpoint, because he is taking on that responsibility. So I think they kind of need to give Luke Walton at least until the All-Star break to try and figure out if he can really control this team and give them a system to go through that LeBron respects enough to kind of back off a little bit.
Agreed. And I don't think they understand what it's like to play with LeBron in October. I don't think they understand what it means for him in terms of effort and in terms of expectations. And I mean, he's out there going 80% while you should be going 100%. The Lakers should be a run and gun team. LeBron should just be like pretty much in a non-stop jog. He doesn't need to be accelerating and doing all these other ancillary stuff. He just needs to be running, outletting, and
That's a good point. They need to really protect LeBron in that way physically, because he's not going to be able to go 82 games playing 40 minutes a game.
No, and if you're what are they? They're 4-5 right now, 9th in the West. God, this 9th game, that's like the 1/9 part of the season. So they're 500, like they're 500 and LeBron's playing 75%. I think worst comes to worst, they're an 8th seed and playing Golden State in the first round. And I think honestly, I think they would take that.
Yeah. I think they'll take the playoffs right now.
Will Luke Walton be there if they're the 8th seed and they get swept by Golden State?
I feel like Luke Walton has to be part of a long-term goal for the Lakers. I could be wrong on that, but it seems like they put a lot.
I think who is in the long-term goal for the Lakers, I think, is Lonzo. I think that's why they brought in Rondo, is because they understood that when it came to playoff time and crunch minutes, Lonzo wouldn't be ready. Lonzo would make mistakes, and you would have, sound bites of Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp and all these big wigs talking about how Lonzo messed up and how Lonzo sucks and how they should trade Lonzo and he's the worst. So I think they've just been, and I think they want him to learn and they want him to be in that role because he was Magic Johnson's first pick ever as the president of the Lakers.
Yeah, and I think he's doing Magic. That is, I think he's doing a good job and just needs to kind of buy into what he's built right now. And that is, he has built a playoff stable team.
But he didn't hire Luke Walton, did he? I think that was Jeanie Buss.
That is true. But I think at the same time, I don't think Luke Walton has done a bad job. I think he's
he hasn't done a bad job. But if you watch Magic on the sideline, he's not.
I did see Magic was upset.
He's not passively watching. I think Magic Johnson wants to go down there and coach the team himself.
Which has happened before. We saw it with Greg Popovich.
I think Jeanie Buss has ultimate faith in two people, Magic Johnson and LeBron James, or Kobe Bryant. But
it's cool to see him take Kobe out of retirement.
Kobe's not coming out of retirement. Magic, I think she blindly trusts him, and I think at this point you should. He's the one that got LeBron James there. And he's like probably one of the only people that LeBron James respects. I think when LeBron was in Miami, he really wanted Pat Riley to come down and coach him. LeBron wants to be coached by someone great because he wants to have that parallel with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was coached by arguably the greatest coach of all time, Phil Jackson. And
that's an interesting point. So
Magic's not in that conversation, but he is in terms of someone LeBron respects. High basketball IQ, elite basketball IQ, and
I said that about LeBron, where I think there's very few coaches in the league that could actually coach him, and I think that Greg Popovich might be the only one left. I don't know, and maybe you can name somebody else. I can't think of anybody else that LeBron James would be willing to be coached by, where he would go into a system and say, this is Greg Popovich's team. I don't see it happening with even a Warriors team. Him going in and saying, this is Steve Kerr's team.
David Fizdale in Miami. I mean, he did it with Eric Spoelstra, but he was very passive-aggressive in that at times.
I think every single coach under LeBron James ages like the president. I think I said it before. Like, if you look at Ty Lue before he started coaching LeBron versus what he looks like now, it's stressful because the lights are on you. And it's the first thing is, how did LeBron play? And then the next thing is LeBron's not happy with how the game was coached.
So it's almost like you have to design a perfect game plan where LeBron gets easy buckets. LeBron is also facilitating, but also when LeBron doesn't feel like doing anything, the team is also clicking at 100% efficiency, and you're developing young players. I think that's a lot for anybody. But yeah. I do think Magic Johnson is another person that can coach a millennial team like Lonzo, Kuzma, Hart. I think Magic has the kind of charisma and whatever you want to call it to get these guys to do anything.
That's an interesting thought. I never thought about Magic actually going into the coaching position. Do you think that is a legitimate possibility?
I don't know. I don't know if it starts bubbling up and if people start talking about it, maybe. I think
honestly, if they get rid of Walton, who else do they have? Are they going to hire Lou?
I know, right? They're not going to.
Kurt Rambis. You mentioned Mike D'Antoni. I want to hit that really quick because Houston is not playing well. I'm legitimately worried about the Rockets, and I'm worried in a way I did not think I would be worried, because the league right now is scoring more than they've ever scored in history. I mean, defense is an all-time low. There's two teams, maybe just one now. Let me check. I think there's only one team that's averaging less than 100 points a game. The Orlando Magic, 99.9 points per game. That's the lowest scoring team in the league right now. And they're giving up 112 points a game. The Houston Rockets, where are they at? They're averaging 106 points per game. That's 25th in the league right now. This is a team that should be averaging, I think I made a prediction. I was like, they're going to average 130 points a game this year. Why? Because they don't have the defense to keep up with teams if they're going to go and play a half-court game, which is what they're doing. What does D'Antoni think that he has? The players that he has are, let's run and shoot. They need to go back to European res ball type of 7 seconds or less type of Phoenix Suns basketball. And he's gone away from that. And I made a prediction that Mike D'Antoni will never win a championship. I said he can get to the Western Conference Finals a few more times, but I'm actually blown away that Mike D'Antoni has let the Houston Rockets do this, because he said he wanted to shoot even more threes than they shot last year. And they've been unsuccessful in every single way, and he has every single player that he could ever ask for to make that happen, in Harden, Paul, and now Carmelo and Eric Gordon.
Yeah, and we'll eventually tie this back in with Minnesota. And it's funny you bring up Houston, because Minnesota right now and Houston are so linked with the Jimmy Butler trade, and Eric Gordon seems to be the cog in that machine, if you will. Right now, the Houston Rockets 3-5, 13th in the West, 22nd in defensive rating, 22nd in pace.
See, that's the stat right there.
23rd in offensive rating. I agree with you that the Houston Rockets should be the Mike D'Antoni run and gun like they normally are. But I'm not sure that James Harden is at that stage in the season, like similarly with LeBron, because they're so physically dominant that you can't be that way over 9 months. You just can't. And I'm not sure that Chris Paul at 34, 33, if he's, there. He's only averaging 19 points per game. It's not like he's, amazing. I think Clint Capella, you can point at him maybe as like a, I don't know. I mean, 15 points, that's the same as JaVale McGee. You're not really getting any more added value. I think Carmelo Anthony is a guy you can look at and actually say that, wow, we've actually got some value there. For the minimum contract, for being on the minimum contract, I think, he scored, I think I saw he was like 45 points in the last 2 games, and that's just great. You just can't get that from a general bench player. Like, that's not a consistent Jamal Crawford thing anymore. Is he enough to replace Trevor Ariza? I don't know. I think James Ennis is a guy you can point to and say, we need more from. 7 points per game as a starter. He's shooting 45% from 3. I mean, they just don't have depth. You can't play Michael Carter-Williams. I saw him do an awful underneath the basket out of bounds play, and it was just a terrible turnover. He's not an NBA guard. You shouldn't be having him. And Mike D'Antoni likes to have tight rotations. He likes 7-8 man rotations, especially in the playoffs. And I think this team is built for the playoffs. It's built for 4-man basketball with a death lineup of Chris Paul, Eric Gordon, Carmelo Anthony, James Harden, and Clint Capella. It's not meant for this new run and gun. They just don't have the pieces for it. Marquise Chris, you can't expect anything from him. Isaiah Hartenson, Gary Clark. I mean, these guys, Gerald Green, maybe, but I mean,
I get that, but at the same time, D'Antoni's got to know how to coach this, and he hasn't done a good job because in a league where you've got 3 of the most dominant offensive players, a playmaker like Chris Paul, a guy like Eric Gordon.
Shot maker like Eric Gordon.
Yeah,
Eric
exactly.
Gordon on the Pelicans, you put him next to Anthony Davis, and he's off. Okay, so what does a Jimmy Butler replacing, assuming you have to give up a Eric Gordon, assuming you have to give up Eric Gordon for Jimmy Butler, what does he look like on there?
I think he would be a great addition to Houston. I think we would see them move back up into being a playoff type of team, because he's exactly what Houston's missing, which is somebody that's going to run the floor, be excited, play defense.
James Harden. Jimmy Butler is really good at attacking the basket, driving the basketball, finishing, spotting up for threes.
And I think we would see a direct correlation, because right now Houston's shooting 33% in the season from 3-point. You have to be better than that. And right now what they don't have is any kind of intelligence. They're not using Clint Capella in the right way. So what they need to do is go inside to Clint Capella, make teams respect Capella so that he can kick back out if they're going to play a half-court game. Right now,
Capella, what do you expect from Capella? I mean,
the way he talked and the salary that he demanded?
This isn't the NBA that, okay, they should not have signed him to that. In this NBA, you have to have a Zach Collins, a guy who can stretch the floor. Big men are shooting threes now. You see it in the Brook Lopez's in the world. I mean, it's not 2015 where Lob City in Los Angeles Clippers is working anymore, where DeAndre Jordan catching lobs and running the floor. You have to be able to stretch the floor and shoot threes. You have to be like a Kristaps.
I agree with that, but at the same time, Houston has all of the tools to stretch the floor. Like, they don't need a 5th guy out on the outside trying to shoot a 3. I understand the value of having like a Blake Griffin, where if he steps up and he's wide open, he can knock that 3 down. And I didn't always used to see the NBA that way. I used to be mad at that. It's it's something that should be accepted now. It's something that's necessary.
That's very good, the growth of you.
Yeah. I don't necessarily see the need for it in Capella though. Him developing a mid-range, absolutely. But doing
So
like an inside out.
What does a max contract Capella look like to you then? Is 15 points not enough? I mean, what is he? How many rebounds is he getting?
It's definitely not enough. He needs to be leading the league in rebounds if you're going to put him on a max contract and he can't shoot a three. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. What's his? I don't know what his averages are.
11 and a half rebounds. So, you know.
Okay, so that's not bad. I actually feel like Capella's probably actually doing his job.
He's shooting 58% from twos. I mean, no threes. You might be right. You might have sold me on Capella. Okay, so at 24, you can't not sign him. Okay, I agree with that. So
I just think they need to run the floor, and Capella's willing to run the floor. He's athletic enough to run it. So if you run and throw that lob to him in the fast break, say he doesn't put it together, but then you got trail guys, you got Harden, you got Melo, you got Paul, guys that you can kick it back out to. Making defenses run like that, you're going to get way more open looks because they're going to be able to kick it out to the outside. If it kicks to Eric Gordon, somebody's got to respect that and close out on it. Kick it over to Carmelo. Obviously, somebody's got to respect that. Over to Harden. You've got 4 guys on the perimeter that can fill it up. I think running.
I'm very surprised with Carmelo this year. Very surprised. 15 and a half points, 37 from 3. At 34 years old and not taking particularly good care of his body. I think you come in and to an established playoff team full of vets, and he becomes the 6th man off the bench. I think that's really underrated, especially at a minimum contract.
Yeah. And
he's playing 31 minutes a game.
Yeah, that's a lot of minutes, actually. And I
don't think people were expecting this out of Carmelo. I think this is really a good progress from him, similarly to Derrick Rose, and we'll get to Minnesota in a second.
Yeah. So I think, this is my last point on Houston. I just think that the core of their problem is actually Mike D'Antoni. It's obviously not working the way that it's going right now. They need to fix something, and all he keeps saying is we're getting out-rebounded. I mean, they're the worst rebounding team in the league as far as opponents' rebounding goes, and they're giving up like 65 rebounds a game. Something insane. They're only rebounding is their main issue. Giving up points in the paint. Sorry. I gave the wrong stat. 65 points in the paint. Not 65 rebounds a game. That would be ridiculous. They're giving up like 50 rebounds a game. Or something close to that.
Right there.
I mean, they're getting beat up down low, though. And then D'Antoni comes out, and after the game, they ask him what the problem is. And we know we're going to get scored on, but we're giving up points too easily. I feel like he's just accepted the fact that his team blows on the defensive end of the floor. We don't have to try that hard, just as long as we can get it done on the offensive end, and they're not getting it done on the offensive end. I think D'Antoni needs to raise his standards for this team, and we can move on to Minnesota.
So if you're Minnesota, we can start with, well, do you trade Jimmy Butler to the Houston Rockets? Do you think that's the best deal out there for him? I don't think it is. I don't think you want 4 Minnesota shitty first-round picks. I'm not sure that helps you.
Honestly, right now, the way Minnesota's playing.
Not unless you have Neil O'Shea and he can flip those picks into Zach Collins.
Yeah, I'm impressed with Zach Collins. I think they should play Swanigan more. I think that was their issue last night, Portland, that is. I think Swanigan should have got minutes against Zubac coming into the game because Zubac put up 9 rebounds, and I think that was the difference in the game. Swanigan should have come in and been able to shut that down. But if I'm Minnesota right now,
I love Swanigan.
Yeah, I think he's going to turn out to be a big player. But if I'm Minnesota, honestly, I'm not touching what's happening right now. I'm going to let this play out because right now they're not playing bad basketball.
No, they're not. And honestly, when they were last year, before Jimmy got hurt, they were playing really good basketball as well.
I think the main issue, and this is obviously from way outside of the Minnesota locker room.
Right. We need to double asterisk this with this is two millennial men, very entitled. We don't even know anything. But
their main problem is Karl-Anthony Towns.
I was just gonna say that guy is as entitled a millennial as I've ever seen. A coddled number 1 pick out of Kentucky who goes undefeated, first pick in the draft. Everyone's on him. The next Anthony Davis, the next Kevin Durant, the next Tim Duncan. Goes to Minnesota, face of the franchise. Hasn't been challenged ever, except maybe by John Calipari. But that might be a 6-month theatrical face he puts on. We don't know.
Yeah,
Jimmy Butler comes in and says, "No. In a capitalism America, you work for what you work for what you're worth, and in the NBA, you haven't worked for anything." So if they're going to take the next step, and if they're going to be like the Spurs, especially as a small market franchise, it's going to have to come from Karl-Anthony Towns. And I don't think ever in his life, again, we don't know anything. Ever in his life, I don't think he's ever been pushed to something that would ever equate in a championship culture. Nothing like Damian Lillard, nothing like, a Tom Brady, where these guys have had to scrape from nothing to get to where they're at. Especially that goes double for Andrew Wiggins. That guy's no dog in him whatsoever. But Karl-Anthony Towns is the one who's they say is the best player. Even Kevin Garnett, he didn't go to the best, high school to the beginning. He made a transfer to Farragut or whatever his senior year, but he still have had that chip on his shoulder being the number 5th pick. Karl-Anthony Towns, I don't know. He may put up monster stats, but I think Jimmy Butler exposed him to the world. He's not an alpha. He just cares about his stats. He's never going to take them past, the conference finals into the deep. He's not going to be a Dirk-like player.
I 100% agree with everything that you just said. And I think the only way that Minnesota gets through this is by fixing that attitude. And I honestly don't know if they can. I've wished for
when they brought in Tibbs. I thought he was the one who was going to install that culture.
And that's a good point, because I thought the same thing. I thought that when they brought in Tibbs and then they brought in Jimmy Butler with Derrick Rose.
Yep.
Derrick Rose obviously has that dog in him, a 25-year-old MVP. I called that one. I told him everyone's sleeping on Derrick Rose. Comes back with 50. That's what I'm talking about. I think that they actually have a team that can make a second-round playoff run. And honestly, if you make a second round in the West and you don't draw the Warriors, you've got yourselves a pretty solid shot at going to a Western Conference Finals. And even if they figure it out, honestly, can this team hang with the Warriors?
The Timberwolves?
Yeah. I mean, if everything goes the way that it is supposed
Honestly,
to. Karl-Anthony Towns finds it within himself to be a great teammate, and Jimmy Butler stays and is playing the same defensive effort that he's playing right now.
There's no one that can compete with the Warriors this particular year. Next year, I don't know. But especially if you assume that DeMarcus Cousins is healthy. There's just no way. He can neutralize Karl-Anthony Towns. No one can cover KD. It's over.
I was going to make a joke about it. Who's that giant guy that's sitting on the end of the Warriors bench? They have a huge black cheerleader now who got kicked out of a game.
I don't know.
DeMarcus Cousins. He's ruined his career. I have zero respect for DeMarcus Cousins. And I think he's going to make the Warriors worse when he comes back in, because they're playing excellent basketball right now, and there's no way that he can make that better.
The Minnesota Timberwolves, back to them, I think earned their position of where they're at. Let me explain. They have had multiple opportunities to turn the franchise around. And I'm not talking about passing Steph Curry twice in the 2007 NBA draft. I'm talking about 2016 when you take Chris Dunn and then trade him 2 years later, when you could have taken Jamal Murray, for example. You could have taken Sabonis. You could have taken Buddy Hield with that 6th pick. 2017, Lauri Markkanen is going to be a great addition to the Bulls. You don't think he would be great next to Karl-Anthony Towns right now?
Yeah, that's one that I would have brought up is Lauri Markkanen. I think
even Frank Ntilikina, he's looking great for New York. And if you're going to give up Jimmy Butler for, a dime on the dollar, I'm not sure. I don't know what Jimmy Butler's value right now is. I'm not sure what that looks like.
I think he's honestly really valuable.
Dennis Smith is available. Donovan Mitchell was available with that pick.
I don't think anybody saw Donovan Mitchell coming, though. I mean, that's kind of who saw that one?
True. Rick Pitino, that's who.
I think if I'm Minnesota, I'm holding on to this group that I've got right now because they're winning games. Derrick Rose just put out 50.
But there's a level of cultural instability with Jimmy Butler sitting out on non-televised games. They're playing the Blazers tonight, and he's sitting out due to rest. And he's going to play whenever they're on ESPN. I think that sends the wrong message.
They've definitely got some issues, but I don't think that's – he did miss the preseason. He said his body's hurting because he's going after it. I mean, he's not – he's playing like playoff effort right now. So I believe that he is kind of hurting. I think I saw he's averaging like the most deflections per game. He's averaging the most steals per game right now. He's like max effort on the defensive end of the floor, and he's after it on the offensive end of the floor. So like every single minute he's on the floor, he's running, sprinting, banging into guys. And I think that's a big part of their success right now. And I was hoping that it would rub off on Karl-Anthony Towns. But I saw him quit 4th quarter. If I'm going to trade somebody, I'm honestly trading Karl-Anthony Towns and seeing if I can get Anthony Davis.
He seems to be dogging it, like pouting that Jimmy Butler is playing. He's pouting. That's honestly what he's doing.
He needs to learn the game.
I'm a millennial male who's been whatever, blah, 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 privileged, whatever. But still, like this guy needs to serious check. And he's doubling down on the fact that he knows that he's the best investment for the franchise. And it's just sad.
I would go after Anthony Davis if I'm a Timberwolves upper management. I think you got a realistic like 1-to-1 trade with Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Davis.
We had a viewer right when you said that, and then he left. Right after you said that.
Not a popular viewpoint.
Interesting one, to say the least.
It just popped into my head, to be honest with you.
Well, I don't think Anthony Davis is going to resign in Minnesota.
No, that's a fair point.
Although
but he's still got Derrick Rose.
Destinations. I just did a quick, and I'm on this dunkingwithwolves.com, which is like a fan-sided affiliate. Clippers, Houston Rockets, Cleveland Cavaliers among teams interested in Butler, among league sources say. The Nets have interest, but they haven't been engaged recently with Minnesota. Washington and Dallas are among teams who've gauged interest, who've gauged the asking price for Butler, but no deal as of late. Of all those teams, Clippers, Dallas. Houston, Dallas. You're saying you're a Dallas team and you're going to flip a Dennis Smith Jr. and another young piece.
Oh, I don't know. When you put a trade into it, that makes it tough.
Dennis Smith is redundant next to Luka Doncic. I think Dennis Smith is a driver. He's a Kemba Walker project, and I think Luka comes along with a better skill set. Now that you mentioned that as like a good team, I think he's a guy that you can get out while the value is high, while he's a young prospect, because he may not ever get to that level, especially like next to Luka running the whole show.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know if I would trade Dennis Smith Jr. I think he's got a lot of potential. I don't necessarily like using that word with the whole Myers Leonard debacle, but
It's really what it is.
but I think that a lot of these teams, like the Dallas Mavericks, I think could afford to just wait it out and maybe try to pick him up out of free agency. I think the Houston Rockets need him right now. Like the Houston Rockets need to be a playoff team. So I think of all those teams listed, the one that probably needs him most and that would fit with Jimmy Butler's agenda and his playing style and ability is the Rockets. And if I was the Rockets, I'd be trying everything possible to keep. I would try to keep my 5 core guys, which is Capella, Gordon, Paul, Anthony, and Harden, in no particular order. And I would trade my bench for Jimmy Butler.
Okay, real quick. On the Nets. 5 minutes on the Nets, then we got to wrap up.
Okay.
If you're the Nets, you have a core, D'Angelo Russell, Karis LeVert, Jarrett Allen. Are you gambling on the fact that you think you can get a Jimmy Butler, a Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Kawhi? Do you gamble on that? Do you give up any of these young assets now? You know, you have Kenneth Faried on the books for a couple of years. Joe Harris is really shooting well this year from 3. I think he was like among the league leaders. They have Shabazz, who we've seen in Portland be a valuable contributor. Spencer Dinwiddie, who, you know, should probably be in the running of most improved player throughout his career. Jared Dudley, a valuable vet. DeMarre Carroll, a valuable vet. You know, Rondé Hollis Jefferson, still 23. You know, I think they have a really good Theo Pinson from North Carolina. I really liked him. Ed Davis, you know, they're just recycling old Blazers. I love it with Alan Crabb and Shabazz.
Yeah.
But those are good culture guys. I think the Nets are building something special, and I don't think you should, you know, hedge that bet on any Jimmy Butler trade at the trade deadline when you can sign one of these guys next year.
That's a good point about the culture. I think that's probably the only thing Brooklyn has for them. I was about to just trash on them, and that's it. I don't see how they've got like a big market type of draw. I guess I mean they are located in Brooklyn. They do. It just doesn't seem like it the way that they have historically attracted nobody.
Yeah. But it's different nowadays. Guys that can commute from New York City, you know, it's definitely a huge draw.
I think, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I should take that back. But I mean, a draw in terms of where their roster is sitting right now, where their salary space is sitting.
Okay.
They've got a lot of pieces to trade, but like if you trade for Jimmy Butler, let's say, what's he going to do? Yeah. Jimmy Butler's then your best player, and that's not how you're gonna win games. Jimmy Butler is honestly the way that I look at Jimmy Butler, how he would be most valuable is in like a Danny Green situation, but Danny Green on steroids. So much more skill and ability on the offensive end of the floor. And I think he's more athletic.
Danny Green, I think they're just different players. Danny Green is more of a shooter, and Jimmy Butler's more of a driver, finisher. I think Jimmy Butler's more of like a DeMar DeRozan type.
Yeah, but I think that they fill the same type of role where they're that spark plug that could keep a championship team rolling even when they're dead, which is what you see out of Danny Green. I don't think the Warriors would be who they are without Danny Green. I think even if they had Durant, Thompson, Cousins, Curry on the floor, if they didn't have Draymond Green anymore, they would not be a championship caliber team. Oh, my bad. I meant Draymond.
Draymond, okay. Well,
I was picturing Draymond.
The sun's going out where you're at. We've hit a good mark. Miles, let's do this again soon.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, and you'll be in so you're traveling tomorrow, and then
Yeah, I'll be in Miami.
cool. All right, see you then.
Yeah.